What?
When he woke at morning, it was really cold and dim in the cabin. His dad was gone, but Vida was still in bed with her black coat and the worn car robe from the forge spread over the covers. The open gas heater was on high and hissing, turning its asbestos backing orange. He could hear wind and rattly sounds against the cabin walls. He crawled across the bed to pull the paper roller blind aside. The trees back of the cabin stood bent and laced with glinting ice under a lowering gray sky. Silvery iced pine limbs lay snapped beneath in a tangle of frozen grass. "We're caught in an ice storm, Jay," his stepmother's voice came muffled from the pile of bedclothes. "Your daddy's down at the club. Electricity's all off because ice and falling branches broke the lines. Didn't you hear the tree limbs snapping last night?" "No." He felt scared. "What'll we do?" "We'll just stick tight, snug as bugs in a rug. This can't last forever. I'll fix some food on the hot plate pretty soon. The main thing is not to run out and get hurt. We'll camp here in bed." And so they did, hours spent wrapped in the covers as Vida told him of her childhood while he drew on brown paper bags with his crayons from his cedar box. When it got dark early, Vida put melted lard in a can, draped butcher twine over the side, and lit it. The tiny flame shed a soft halo on the room. "This is the same light used in Bible times, Jay. You can always get by without much if you have to. Have you ever had to do this?" He nodded. "When I got sick at Mom's, grandmother's, she put me in bed with a Bible storybook and my drawing stuff, but we always had lamps and lanterns." Sometime after dark, his dad came in, kicking slush off his rubber overshoes. "It's starting to melt, kids. If this keeps up, the power crews will be out tomorrow. I built up the furnace and locked up." The ice storm kept them in 2 days more, but then warmth returned. Vida went back to the club daily with Jay. The way adult couples behaved when they were out for fun amazed him. It was all new and different from life on the farm. He watched it all avidly. For the first time, he saw grown-up men and women dancing close together, arms clasping bodies close in public. He noted the playful and flirty tone in their joking and laughing. He sensed some big secret they all knew. His dad and Vida acted that way at times, might stare at each other silently and grin. The patrons in the club tolerated him and took him as a mascot. He wanted to take part somehow and pay them back. Once he got up his nerve, went boldly over to one group and announced, "If you'll put a nickel in the jukebox, I'll dance for you." Poker-faced in front of the big box's colored panels, he did a cross between a double shuffle and a bouncing jig in his little tennis shoes. They all clapped and whistled while his stepmother stood red-faced in the doorway to the back room laughing helplessly. He did that only once. And then the weather turned even better, like summer, and he discovered the neighborhood gang of boys of all ages. They took him to their secret club, an underground room not far away. It was really not underground. The top was at ground level with a framework of sticks and poles covered with a white sheet for a roof. The light came through the sheet nicely, showing the tan walls smoothly carved from silty clay. Crawling down the curved tunnel entrance made him a little nervous. After that, the older boys took them all up a small stream nearby to its source. The lead boy had a gig thing he'd made from a 3-pronged sapling, with each prong tipped with a nail and a sewing spool. He acted like he knew a lot, and he showed the younger boys strings tied to the spear tips, telling them the strings would attract fish and frogs when he trailed them on the water. This all sounded hokey to Jay. At last they reached a spring, a bottomless wooden barrel sunk in the sand against a low hill. Clear water bulged over its rim, and green streamers of algae waved merrily from its depths. A few boys dipped water in their cupped hands and drank from it. Not Jay. He thought of the wonderful spring back in the Ozarks, rushing out of its cave and into Indian Creek. Nothing like this slimy, oozy stuff. Now that his folks had a little money from the club, they drove into the bigger town every weekend, first to Mubby's or to Lois and Heath at the farm, But before that, they had dinner with Blanche's family at the lake. Their house stood on a knoll with scattered pines above the water. On the way out there, Vida pointed out a long field with rows of rose bushes, all cut short. She said Tyler was famous for its roses. Jay had never seen flowers grown like food before. He couldn't recall any roses at all on the home farm, maybe some vines around the east kitchen porch. There sure weren't any big fields of flowers or any pine trees either. Except for the oil wells and gas flares, though, the country was open and rolling like near the home farm, but without any hedge tree fences. He saw a few cows, but they were red and white, not black and white like at home. At the dinner, he was at a card table down at the end. The other two kids were lots older and stayed around the adults, who talked and laughed nonstop. After he ate some, he went out and wandered down the path to the dock at the shoreline, or where the shoreline had once been. What was once underwater was now a wide beach with boats scattered sideways on the fine sand. He walked along among the uncovered and uncared-for boats. One nearest him was homemade of heavy steel with big welding seams on its rusting hull. The stern end was mostly buried. He walked over to look. The inside was filled with sand at the same level as the beach. After a moment, he turned and walked to the water so clear that he could see every sand ripple on the bottom, all exactly parallel. He saw not even a minnow and had a funny, empty feeling. He climbed to the dock and looked out, lost and uncertain as he surveyed all this stuff. What did it mean? What was it all for? He climbed back to the house where the grown-ups still talked and joked. For Thanksgiving, they drove in again to Mubby's and then to the farm to visit with Lois and Heath and Grace Florence and with Uncle Emery, the one Vida helped to dry himself out and learn Spanish, and then go off to the oil fields in Venezuela. Grace Florence acted grown up already, not much interested in Jay, but Uncle Emery was full of exciting stories. He told of exploring up wild jungle rivers for oil and roofed launches with metal screens to keep off poison arrows. He showed a long and heavy polished bow and an arrow with a long barbed head. He told of the camp boss going upstream in the launch to fish, casting with a metal screen up. An arrow hit him in the arm and he fell over in the boat. When they saw the boat drift down to the camp, they went out to get him, but he was dead. That fall, Heath sold Nixie's place, and they had to move. Jay recalled visiting Mubby's home a couple of times with his stepmother. He wandered around while Vida talked with Mubby in her room. Sometimes he hung around Daddy Pa as he talked with one of the men roomers in the lounge. He was 6 in December, but nothing happened about it, and he didn't expect it. Vida told him they couldn't do much about birthdays and holidays as long as they were job gypsies. He did get a birthday postcard from Grandmother Ivy. She always sent one, scribbled with a pencil stub. He could read a little now, but he had to have it read to him. Her writing was like little pointy waves on a pond.